The Hidden Killers Podcast.
We are talking with Scott Rader of Evidence Room. Scott, I'm curious to get your insight from your perspective and your prism of understanding the legal system and working in and out of it all the time with forensic evidence and testifying in trials and seeing how that legal system works from your perspective on Kohberger's lack of a plea. Him and his attorney, Ann Taylor, standing up saying, Your Honor, we are going to stand silent, and then the court coming in and saying, okay, I'm going to mark that down as not guilty. Is this a strategy, Scott?
Well, I think that one of the things he's trying, because he really has not spoke out loud, right? Mm-hmm. He has not verbalized anything on the record since he's been arrested.
Yeah.
And that might have something to do with limiting witnesses' ability to identify his voice. It could be an act of defiance. Those are the two things that jump to my mind right out of the gate.
That's interesting to look at it from that way. You're looking at it from an evidentiary standpoint of someone could go and say, I know that voice, or it could be recognized or cross-connected some way, shape, or form. The thing that had come to my mind, and I'm wondering if you have any insight into it, it's more of a legal type question, but you obviously, you work in that world and maybe you've seen something similar, could this be in any way connected to the state having 60 days to decide whether or not they're going to bring the death penalty against Kohberger? Could that be some sort of an inroad for pleading? If this, say he does come out and pulls a Dennis Rader. Dennis Rader did the exact same thing. He stood silent when he was supposed to plea. And then at the end of the day, it never went to trial because he then made a deal to tell his story, to tell everybody in great detail what happened, and he did not get the death penalty in Kansas. Is that something that maybe is a strategy here, or is this more, like you were saying, possibly in defiance, possibly a control thing? We know he's very much about being in control.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I'm leaning toward not getting his voice on the record under great audio for identification purposes from surviving witnesses. However, I think you make a good point in that by not verbalizing his plea of not guilty, and that plea of not guilty just being assumed or through the attorney, that does leave the door open, I think, for the judge and the prosecutor to essentially use that plea as a bargaining chip to get the death penalty off the table. So I think you make a good point. I personally have never seen that happen in any case that I was involved in, but I think you make a good point, and it's very, very possible.
Are we seeing, and this is something I was thinking about last night, and there's been a lot of comparisons to BTK, although they're very different in the way that they committed their crimes, and there's a lot of dissimilarities compared to the similarities, but there are some, and there's some very interesting stark ones. Number one, the way that he pled the other day, or did not plead. Also, obviously, he had that connection to the woman who wrote the book on BTK, studied him in great detail, had those conversations about what BTK did. And we've learned that Bryan was very much trying to study the psychology of people like that and understand how one felt when they're in this situation or that situation. And here's another one that just came to mind last night. Everyone online, when they don't want to type out Bryan Kohberger in these discussion groups, it's BK. Very close to BTK. I am starting to wonder, is this part of, whatever messed up thing is going on in his mind? Is he trying to, in some ways, not all the ways, obviously, but in some ways emulate BTK?
Well, from the very beginning, I identified this as a, potential serial killer in the making. By definition, he's already a serial killer if he's found guilty of, killing these poor kids. However, The profile of serial killers that particularly, I mean, the one main thing that they have in common, excuse me, the one main thing they have in common is extreme narcissism and notoriety. He's obviously getting that notoriety. He obviously is a narcissistic personality. And I was talking with a psychiatrist and a therapist the other night on a different show, and they all believe that he has dissociated personality disorder from analyzing, his life and his alleged high school heroin abuse as a pain coping mechanism to help disassociate him from reality. I think it's not that far off the beaten path that people like this look to emulate people they admire. I think he fits the bill in every way with regard to this. He has that stone cold blank face every time the camera's on him. He doesn't seem to have a whole lot of emotion, even when, he was being pulled over by the police on the body camera on his way to Pennsylvania, fleeing the investigation with his dad. He seemed really strained, talking in a normal way, under that investigation. This is a guy who is very much trying to, his whole life, trying to pretend to be normal. A wolf in sheep's clothing. These wolves, they want to be the biggest, baddest wolf. And I think, his curiosity on BTK, and then given his initials, I think that there's a natural, where he might be drawn, toward that. I think you're getting warm, Tony. I think you're getting real warm.
And it's interesting, the family as well of BTK, Carrie Rawson, has been speaking out quite a bit on this topic. She, of course, the daughter of BTK, recognizing more so in the area of what his family must be going through, trying to square up this idea that their son, their brother, could possibly be this killer. They even, the allegations are that over the holidays, the sister came out and said, what if you're the killer? You have the Elantra. You're acting rather strange, doing everything in plastic gloves. Of course, I'm paraphrasing here. And they even allegedly went to go and try and look in the back of this car to see if there was any sort of evidence, but he'd already cleaned it with bleach. Obviously, investigators can find a lot more. Bleach is not going to get rid of DNA or anything in those fibers of that car. Deep down, there's going to be something there. But it's interesting to hear that family, trying to struggle with it. And we don't know. We have not heard from them officially by any means as to where their stance is on this. It's noted that they were not in court the other day. We haven't heard anything. And inside things that I'm hearing is that they may be coming to grips, that they may be accepting that it is him, that their son, their brother may be the one behind this. I'm not speaking for them, but I'm gonna guess that's the direction we're going to find them going soon.
Yeah, I mean, what a horrible situation, for the daughter, of the BTK killer. I just imagine that, you live your life and then you find out your parents, your dad or your son or your brother is this horrific killer. But of course, all horrific killers have families. And although the families you can't say are directly related in the causation of him becoming or them becoming killers, but you can imagine the amount of guilt and embarrassment that a family member would have. Obviously the first thing is, you want to not believe it. How could somebody with the same genetic DNA and blood running through their veins be so horrible when you're so not horrible? Or maybe you start feeling guilt that, maybe there's something wrong with your family, and that was what we were talking about with the psychiatrist the other day. where, this Freudian model of psychology where you're like, well, something happened in the childhood that caused this person to be a murderer. And then the psychiatrist told me, and she is an 84-year-old Holocaust survivor. And she told me, she's like, under the Freudian model, you would think all of the people that were in the concentration camps in Nazi Germany who had all of their families killed, and they were horrified throughout their life for the trauma that they went through.
Yeah.
They didn't become killers.
Yeah.
So I would have the family remember that model when trying to relieve themselves from guilt. Sometimes evil just happens.
It does. And I think that family is probably sitting there going through their minds going, what did we do wrong? And it's not like not necessarily they did anything wrong. Sometimes people this is how they come out. You can have multiple children, same parents, same sort of upbringing, and you have one go one way very far, another goes the other way. Like you said, evil knows no bounds on some things like this. One thing I wanted to ask you about, the other traffic stop video, this is the one where he went through the red light and he was pulled over.
Yeah.
There's quite a bit of conversation in that video, far more than the other two. I was talking with Jennifer Coffindaffer just the other day about that, and that one stands out to her quite a bit as well because of the way he interacts. Very much an aura of control, the way he talks to the officer. Well, actually, this is what happened. Not really accepting the authority, very much, no, I'm right, you're wrong, but in a very, I guess, passive-aggressive way, I guess is how I would say it, narcissistic sort of way as well. I think that really, it reminds me, it kind of gives me chills when I listen to the matter-of-fact way he talks about what he's being accused of in that. It does remind me a lot of Rader when he was in the courtroom, very matter-of-factly talking about the gruesome, horrible ways he killed those young women.
Yeah, it reminded me of, there's this funny video on TikTok of this guy who impersonates a stereotypical Redditor.
Okay.
Where this guy in this, kind of funny nerdy hat walks into a restaurant to buy something, and he's like, well, actually, what I'm really trying to say is that, and I kind of see a lot of that in this Bryan Kohberger, where, he's just trying to correct everybody. Yeah. He needs to be the smartest man in the room. And I think that's what he aspired to be. And you can see that come through when he interacts with people, trying to correct the record, trying to control and direct the conversation. And I think that's a very stereotypical thing that, narcissists do, is they try to control the conversation. You see that quite a bit when you hear politicians answer questions. And we all know politicians are very much narcissists as well. Otherwise, they wouldn't aspire to be politicians. Where you ask them a question and they'll say, yeah, good question, but I'm not going to answer that. I'm going to take it into this direction. And I think that you see that stuff with Bryan as well.
You're listening to the Hidden Killers podcast.
Hidden Killers podcast with Tony Bruschi.
Scott Rader of Evidence Room, thank you so much for your insight on that. You want to weigh in yourself on any of the cases that we're talking about, 888-5-KILLER is our phone number, 888-554-5537. If you want to weigh in, you can do it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. My name is Tony Bruschi. Stay with us.